Hey everyone, I'm Stuart from Comico, and let's get you started with the basics and then build an API. When you log in, you see your team or organization and its workspaces. Let's create a new workspace. And within a workspace, it's important to know where to start. You're going to write logic in Comico, and you do this by creating your own functions, which you can then reuse time and time again, saving you from repeating yourself. And there are three categories of file in Comico. Function collections, where you hold your functions, templates for creating PDFs or emails, and importantly, triggers. And triggers turn your functions into API endpoints, webhooks, or scheduled tasks. They work by mapping an incoming request to one of your functions. Let's create an API in Comnoco. We'll do a really simple example that takes in a theme and uses OpenAI or GPT to generate a list of movies, and then we'll store that in a database, in this case, Supabase. So we'll start by creating a function collection, and then inside that, we'll create a function that will be the entry point for our logic. We'll call it generate store. When building in Comnoco, it's laid out in an organized tree view with slots where you can add things. So here we've got a slot to define items the function will take in, it will send back, working variables, and where you'll build your logic. We want to take in a piece of text that defines our theme, so we'll add a text block and we'll define it to be a query parameter. Let's make our API respond with the number of movies that were generated, so we'll add a number as an output and name it count. And we'll want somewhere to put our working data, so let's add a data structure for that in internal variables. So let's build our logic timeline. We'll start by filling our data structure from an API call using a set data structure, and we'll point it to our data structure. And on the from, we'll use the result of an API call block. And to set this call up, I'm going to simply go to the OpenAI website examples, find their spreadsheet creator, copy the curl example, and paste it into Comnoco. And I'm going to change the pasted text to ask it to return a JSON snippet rather than CSV, and to just allow it to do a bigger answer. So make the tokens number bigger. And as you can see, when I press import, it automatically sets everything up, including building the Comnoco tree on the left with all of the inputs that are required. And in the Comnoco tree view, you can run bits in isolation. In this case, I ran the data structure that shows what's going to be sent to the API call. And now I need to add the secret or the API key to access OpenAI. And to do this, I go to my workspace configuration, add a secret, paste it in. And while I'm there, I'll also set the same secret up for production so that when I deploy it, it also works. That's now usable, and I can click on the tree, choose a secret, and get it from the dropdown. So let's test this API call. Let's run it and see what we get. And it looks good to me. The only thing is, the JSON has come back as a text string, and I want to see it as a data structure. So I'm just going to convert that. I can do a set data structure. I'm going to choose to output it back to the same place. And then on the from, I'm going to convert from JSON into a data structure. So now when I run this, you see it converts what was text into a nice data structure for me. A good tip is that every time you run something in Comnoco, you can see the logs, and you can access those on the bottom right. And when you see the logs, if you've got any errors, you can click on the error and it will take you to the block that errored so that you can work out what's going on. Okay, so now we know that our call worked to the API. Let's go back and let's change it so that we can make the theme that it's calling dynamic. And we'll do that by changing the text to a text template. And then I will paste in the prompt. And then once that's in, I'm just going to change that with my squiggly brackets to get the data called theme, and I'll map that theme into the data it's being given. So now that will build the AI prompt from the input parameter. I'm going to give it some test data using car chase as a theme. Test it and see that it runs, and there it has. That's what I want. So now that's all good. I'm just going to do a little tidy up. I'm going to name my blocks just so I can see what's happening. I'll add a little comment here. I think I'll name my next block as well. And now we can move to the next step, which is to store our result into Supabase. So let's go to Supabase and we'll set up a new table. We'll call it movies, and we'll create two fields, one title, which is text, and another one year, which is a number. Cool. So we'll use a Supabase database block to be able to store the records to Supabase. And like we did before, we're going to add a secret so that we can securely connect to Supabase. And then we're going to define a connection as well, which defines a reusable database connection or Supabase connection that we can use elsewhere in our project. And again, not forgetting to set up our production versions as well, so that when we publish, it will also work. Now we can go back to our function, and in our database block we can choose the connection, select which table we want to operate on, which in our case is movies, and then choose what we want to do. In our case, we want to create the records. And if you click here, Comico will set up the data structure that's required to create records. But in our case, we already have a list of records that the API call gave us, so we will link to those as a reference instead. And now if I run this block, you'll see that our records get added into Supabase. Fantastic. So now that works, let's just return the count of the records that we generated and stored to Supabase as the result of this function. So we'll add a number or set number. We'll point it to our output count. And on the from, we can use a count items block and point that to the array that contains our movies. And that returns a count as we'd expect. So that's job done, our function's working. And you should now see, or start to see, how using Comnoco is all about clicking blocks together, and it only ever shows you compatible blocks, so you can't make big mistakes. And actually, if you want to see all blocks, you can even go to the Block Explorer, which you'll find in the left-hand side pull-out tab. Cool, now let's turn this into an API that any other system can call, maybe your front end or any other system or app you're working with. To do this, we need a trigger, and we tell that trigger then to use this function. So here we create a trigger, and then on the get method, let's go and select this function. So that's now mapped. And now we want to set up some security. In this case, we're going to keep it simple and have no security. We'll just make it public. But to do that, we need to tell the process to run with permissions to access our secrets. So we need a service user that can access our workspace. So we create one here, tell it can access this workspace. And then we can just say when it's running in public mode to access on behalf of that user. And then the final thing we do is tell it to be active on publish in this case. Publish it all, and that's done. We've got a scalable API ready and waiting. And to see that, we can go to the status screen for this workspace. So the status screen shows you all the triggers you have running in a workspace. It'll show you a chart of the activity for each trigger. And for each trigger, it automatically generates an API specification for the function that you map to the trigger. So in our case, we've got this specification here, and even better, you can try it out. So you can press try it out, fill in the query parameter that we have in this case, which is our theme, and then I can press run. So what's interesting in this case is we've got an error. So reading the error, I can see that the external API call is passed back an error, and it's saying there's an unexpected field. And I know why. When I dynamically mapped our AI prompt, I changed the block, I made it a text template, but I didn't name it to the field name that it's expected by OpenAI. So here you see it's called template text 1. That's the field it's complaining about. Let's just rename that, fix it, make it content as expected. And now that's ready to go. So I'll just republish. And then we can try again. Make the theme dogs. Press execute. And once OpenAI has responded, you can see it responded with 10 dog movies. And if we go to Supabase and have a look, there are dog movies. Fantastic. And if you want, you can go and copy the URL and use it somewhere else. In this case, I'm just going to paste it in the browser, change the theme, and run it again. And there we go, it responds with 10 movies again. And as you can see, it's updated it with 10 Tokyo themed movies as I requested. And looking at the chart, you can see it's run. You can see the 2 successful runs and the failed run with the logs. So you've got a full audit trail of what happened, how long it took. Now it's over to you. Please like and subscribe this video if it was useful. And please do sign up to Comico and get building. I can't wait to hear from you.